Hey guys, welcome back. So today we're out the range with some classic Cold War military rifles with a classic optic. The rifle I have here is an STG-58. It's the DS Arms copy of the Austrian FAL. And on top of it is what we're going to talk about. This is the S.U.I.T L2A2 sight. S.U.I.T standing for Sight Unit Infantry Trilux. And this would be the predecessor to the SUSAT that would be used later by the SA-80 rifle optic on the bullpup. And it's an interesting sight because it uses a prism sight. So your ocular side is over bore, but the objective side is slightly left of center of bore. And this type of prism arrangement is common in things like binoculars and other military type optics, but wasn't all that common in sights like this. So that makes it somewhat unique. It's a very short, compact sight that was issued for designated marksmen. So a DMR type application. It was not meant to be a sniper scope. It was meant to be given to certain members of infantry units to use to engage targets from 300 to 500 meters. It is tritium powered, and the tritium core would be up here. And we'll talk more about that in the video. The tritium core would give you a reddish glow to the point of the obelisk type post that comes down from the 12 o'clock position while you're aiming it. So it's a little bit different than what many American shooters would be used to doing. And the concept behind it, it's a very broad post, is so that you don't obscure the target with the sighting post. So it comes down from the 12 o'clock, you hold center of mass, and that was the principle behind it. So again, it's a very neat 4-power sight. Now, it was developed for the L1A1 rifle. It's known as the L2A2 optic. And of course, the L1A1 is an inch pattern. This is clearly a metric pattern rifle, but yet this top cover still fits on the rifle. You'll also notice that the top cover itself and how the sight mounts to it. There's a throw lever that I'm holding right now that's held in place by a screw. You take the screw out, pull up on this, and the sight will come off of its mount. The FAL top cover mounts have become pretty hard to find these days. You'll see more of the M16 type mounts, and it's very hard to find information on this particular M16 type of mount. I can find no military lineage, but if you're watching this video and you know the background on this, please share it with me, because I've looked and looked and looked online and I can't find any military history of any military using this particular M16 mount. Now, you will notice that what this is, the Trilux, the L2A2 that's mounted to this carrying handle, has its markings in Hebrew. The Israelis also had these and used them as well on their FALs. So maybe the Israelis developed this mounting system when they converted over to the M16. They want to continue to use the sights. I honestly don't know the background, but these types of mounts are far more common. And if you're going to buy a L2A2 optic, many times it'll come with one of these mounts, and the mounts sell for like 30 bucks. Finding a top cover for this is almost impossible these days. So anyway, oh, and I'll quickly point out this little throw lever right here. This little throw lever is meant for 500 meters, and then back here 300 meters. And you can see it's actually physically lifting the sight up. See how it moves? It's physically lifting the sight up, which is important to note, because when you make elevation and windage adjustments, you're doing it externally and mechanically to the optic. So when you turn the screw, you're physically moving the base up and down. And when you turn the screw here for windage, it's physically moving the sight left and right. It's very similar in concept to the modern day Elcan Spectre DR, which is still in military use. So that external system is still used, even though it seems a little bit barbaric. It actually works pretty well. All right, so let's do a little bit of shooting with the 308, and let's take a look at its Russian counterpart that was developed in the mid-1980s, and many consider it to be a direct knockoff of the L2A2. All right, we have some Fiocchi 308 loaded up, and we're going to take some shots at the challenge target, which is a man-sized target out at 200 meters. I do have it set to its 300 meter setting, but I have it zeroed for 200 meters because I don't have 300 meters out here to shoot at. Well, actually I do, we're just not using it today. All right, so again, it's a 4-power magnification. and it has a very, very short eye relief. So you have to get your eye up to this cup. Now you will notice it's missing its band that holds this cup in place, and that's common to find when you pick these surplus sights up. You will notice on the Israeli sight that's marked in Hebrew, it has its band in place, but that rubber is starting to get a little bit dry and curled up for the eye cup. But that's the band. This exact same type of band would be used here. Now I have taken the screw out of the Israeli sight to show you how you can dismount the sight. So you take that screw out, lift up on this lever, and then pull it all the way back, and the sight will simply lift up and off of its mount. Then you could throw this into your pack, store it, very small, light, easy to use. Now, when setting this optic up for the individual shooter, there's no parallax adjustment, there's no manual focusing that the infantry soldier could do themselves in the field. It takes a special tool to turn the ocular side or the objective side lens to bring the target image into sharp focus for that particular shooter's eyes. So it can't be done, again, in the field. So let's fire 10 more rounds off. We have to conserve ammunition because we're right in the middle of the whole COVID thing, and ammunition is really hard to come by, and we're not getting resupplied. So I have 10 rounds loaded, and one other thing I wanted to point out, if you take a look at the STG-58's rear sight, it uses a short rear sight. If you take a look at an FN FAL, that rear sight's going to be taller, and it would not fit with this optic in place. So that's why I have it mounted to the STG-58. The original L1A1 rifle, its rear sight would fold down, so when you put this on the rifle, the sight would be out of the way. And this rifle, and I believe Israeli rifles, the rear sight was short enough where you could just mount it right on and not fold the sight. But on FN rifles, you would have to either take that rear sight off, or you're not going to use this suit sight with the rifle. All right, got her loaded up. Let's go back out to 200. All right, that's a fun sight to shoot. You're going to be reluctant putting your eye that close to something on a 308, but the eye cup really does protect you. All right, let's break out the Russian rifle. So we've talked about the suit optic. Let's take a look at its Russian counterpart. Many consider this to be a direct knockoff of the L2A2 suit sight, and clearly it is. Now the Russians, in typical Russian fashion, this is a Soviet era sight, and it was developed, we're guessing somewhere in the mid-1980s is when it went into usage, but it actually is a product improved version of this. So with the sight mounted to the AK-74, you'll notice it sets really high. It allows the user to still see their iron sights while the 1P29, which is the military designation of this optic, is. You'll also notice on the side it has the Soviet era sickle and hammer, and I believe there's a civilian version of this that is still sold today, which is the UPO-1, I believe, but this is the 1P29. Now the Soviets still use, well, the Russians, not Soviets, the Russians still use these sights after deploying them in the 1980s, so you'll still see them being used. Another area where they improved the sight, so I showed you how the L2A2 came off of its mount. The Soviets opted to make the quick detach their side mounting system that there was already being used. So it just slides onto its side mounting system. When you don't want the sight on the gun, flip the lever, slide it off, throw it in its case or in your backpack. Also, where the suit had 300 and 500 meter settings, the 1P29 has different drums, and it'd be set up for the general purpose machine gun, which they also had a mount for this, on the Jeep general purpose machine gun, but they had, you know, AK-74, they had AK-47, they had different ballistic drums to use with the sight. And you can pick the elevation. If you look right back here, you're going to see 4. That's for 400 meters. Turn it. It'll lift the sight up, and that's 500 meters all the way out to 1,000 meters. And it doesn't go any lower than 400 meters. So 400 is the lowest you can set it to. Just like the L2A2, the L2A2's tritium is right here on top. Now this tritium would go bad after 8 to 10 years or so. It would get dim, and just radioactive decay would cause it to go dark. So these, it's actually really simple to replace. There's a lot of companies out there that sell units aftermarket, which this sight currently has in it, that are illumination devices that will still allow that post to illuminate. Now it's available in green or red, and red being the original color. So this is where the tritium would be for the Soviet 1P29. And you can see it has its band on its eye cup. And I'll show you the pack or the pouch that it was issued with here in a minute. Let's do some shooting with it. So we'll set the L2A2 and STG-58 aside. Have 20 rounds of 5.45 loaded up. And we'll just shoot right at 200 meters. Now you'll notice it's typical. So the Soviets did function over form versus form over function. It's a very ugly contraption, and typical Soviet mindset or thinking. The soldier doesn't have any type of a cheek weld like you would have with the L2A2, where you actually are resting your cheek on the stock. Your cheek comes nowhere near the stock when you're using the 1P29. All right, but it has the same exact obelisk type post, and it illuminates in the exact same way as the suit. Oh, one other thing that's actually unique to this as well is it has a range finding option in the reticle that sets off to the right-hand side, something that the suit doesn't have. So it's another area where the Soviets improved the function of the sight. This is it looks like a cast aluminum type alloy, and the same is true of the suit, cast aluminum. All right, enough talking, let's do a little shooting. I think I went over him. All right, so much more pleasant shooting than the 308 in terms of recoil, and you're not as reluctant to put your eye up against the cup. But yeah, this is a very interesting sight, and like I said, they're still available in the civilian market. You can still buy the UPO ones online, like Kalashnikov Optics or whatever the name of that place is. You'll still find the civilian versions, but this is the actual military version, which has its different ballistics drums for the use on different weapon systems, which I'll show you here in a moment. This is an original pouch that the 1P29 would be issued with, and it can be stored in here. There's straps, webbing on the rear. Open it up, has the tabs, some Velcro inside. I have an additional eye cup. I don't know if that would have been issued or not, but just for nostalgic purposes, there's a Soviet era coin. And inside here, I keep the original ballistic drums. And you'd swap these drums out depending on which weapon you were using the sight on. Now, finding these sights with their ballistic drums can be very challenging, but as with the S.U.I.T sight, everything on this is externally mechanically adjusted. So once again, for elevation, you're physically moving the sight, and with windage, you're physically moving the sight with a mechanical mechanism outside of the optic itself. It's a prism sight. It uses the exact same concept. You know, it's offset from the bore, and that's something the Soviets were never bothered with. You'll find many of their optics were offset and didn't really favor the use of left-handed shooters. Now, this ocular side is centered over bore. It just has the objective side over the other side, so a left-handed shooter would be able to use this sight just as effectively. So I thought it'd be interesting to show you guys what the ballistic drums look like, since they can be so hard to find, and they'll be marked for the weapon in Russian on the sides. So we'll put those away. And again, these are still in military use, and you can find them, at least the civilian models, pretty readily. The original Soviet military sights like this are becoming harder and harder to find and becoming collector's items in and of themselves. All right, so let's do a little bit more shooting with the AK-74. The rifle that we're shooting it on today is a Russian-made Sega, and then I have some original AK-74 wood stocks on the rifle, making it look the part. All right, some Red Army Standard, 5.45. So the Russians didn't just copy it, they really did improve the sight, made it more functional in the end. All right, that's really fun to shoot. I really enjoy shooting the 1P29. It's a very, very effective type of sight. Now, it's also interesting to note, because the objective sight is off the center of bore, maybe an inch or so, when you zero it, you might want to zero it where it's just a little bit, shooting just a little bit left of center, because keep in mind, the further you go out, if that sight is sitting like this and the bore sitting like this and the sight's sitting like this, then at some point it's going to diverge and cross over, and it's going to shoot to the right or left depending on what range you're shooting it at, so, or how you have it zeroed. So that's always something to keep in mind when you're using an offset optic like the S.U.I.T or the 1P29. I hope you guys enjoyed taking a look at the 1P29 and the L2A2 sight. And as I said earlier in the video, the 1P29 is pretty much a copy of the L2A2, but it's also improved in several different areas, which we pointed out in the video. So it's a lot of fun, and it's very cool. There's a lot of sights out there for the AK that you can pick up from either the Soviet era or modern sights, and you could collect Russian sights by themselves. There's almost that many of them. But if you're looking for something that's kind of unique with a, interesting history behind it, consider picking up one of the UPO-1s, which is the modern version of the Soviet era sight that you see here. And you can find them online, and they're not going to break the bank in terms of picking them up, as opposed to possibly buying an L2A2 with an original top cover for an FAL. Those are commanding really, really premium prices these days, and the pickings are getting pretty slim. The stuff I've seen for sale, the sights are beat up. And yeah, so now the sights can take the beating, they just look a little ugly. The paint comes off of them fairly easily if you bang them up, and obviously they've seen a lot of military service throughout the Cold War. All right, guys, if you enjoy this type of Cold War history stuff, let us know in the comments down below. This is the stuff that we really enjoy, and it's a nice departure from talking about the latest and greatest in technology. And when you use some of this old stuff, you come to appreciate it, because it's just as effective today as it was 30, 40 years ago. Guys, if you'd like to support us here at the Military Arms channel, a great way to do that is to become a Patreon supporter. There is a link down below. Please click that link and consider supporting us right here at the Military Arms channel. Also, there's a join button underneath the video player. Click that join button and consider becoming part of our YouTube membership family right here on YouTube. And last but not least, guys, please swing by and check out coppercustom.com. Thanks for 12 years of support. We'll talk to you guys soon. So much fun. I love the AK-74. Take care, guys.